Guys, I'm Nathan with Duck River Honey. I'm here with Corey Stevens, who is a VSH queen breeder. That's varroa sensitive hygienic, which is it's basically a mite tolerance mechanism. Mite resistance mechanism in honeybees. And you've been at this for 10 or 12 or 15 years now.
Yeah, a solid decade with VSH.
So you got a population here where you are artificially inseminating, you are selecting for mite resistance.
Yep.
And your primary selection criteria or testing criteria has been the Harbo assay.
Correct.
And I did a video with you, when was that, a month or a month and a half, 2 months ago?
I think it was mid-April, wasn't it?
All right, so basically you take a frame, you have to pull 100 cappings off, pull the brood out.
It's got to be,
it's got to be after purplize stage. So the bees have had a chance to, the mites have had a chance to reproduce, and the bees have had a chance to remove those reproductive mites. And it's very time consuming. That's the key.
Indeed.
It's tedious.
That's why I call friends.
If you would,
it'll be fine.
You could pay me enough to do Harbo assays for a while,
but then the money wouldn't matter.
But then I would burn out and go insane.
Exactly.
I could not do it. It's super tedious. So this is why Kaira Wagoner, am I saying that right?
That's right.
Kaira Wagoner is here. You are developing UBeeO, which is unhealthy brood odor.
That's correct.
And this is an odor that the bees pick up on that simulates unhealthy brood.
That's right.
And we think it is testing for the same mechanisms or traits within the bees that you've been breeding for a long time.
Right.
At least there's overlap.
There's overlap.
Yeah.
There's a lot of overlap.
We see that this is an unhealthy brood pheromone, so it's essentially these pheromones that are elevated in unhealthy brood. And when we see a colony that's responsive to those in terms of uncapping and hygienic removal, responsive to this pheromone mixture, is also resistant to mites. So they have fewer mites in the colony.
Okay. Now, this is the key for me, is real world application.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not a scientist, I'm a beekeeper. So real world application. There were 5 of us here when we did the Harbo assays. It took all day to do 30 frames.
Did we pull that day or did we pull the day before?
We pulled that day.
Okay,
we were pulling that morning, then we tested the afternoon. It took all day with 5 people to do 30 frames. You guys, with what,
3 of us.
With 3 of you, tested 30 frames in 4 hours yesterday.
Yeah, we didn't even start till after 1 or 1 p.m. or so.
So we can usually knock out 60 or 70 colonies with 2 of us if we're moving.
Yeah, and having a good time and chatting too.
Yeah.
So the process is very different. You're testing in the field, you've got an applicator with a spray, and you're using a little piece of PVC. You put it down on the frame, on the brood, and spray it.
That's correct.
And then put it back in the colony, and you're actually testing the bees themselves to see if they react to this scent.
Right. So we give them 2 hours, and we see what they can do in 2 hours in terms of uncapping. Sometimes if they're crazy bees like Corey's here, they'll start pulling them out too, but usually we just see uncapping behavior if they're responsive to the pheromones.
Okay, so it's a far faster testing methodology than doing Harbo assays.
Right.
Now, you told me something very encouraging yesterday. And of course, this is not scientific, but you said it's not scientific because it's not peer reviewed and, you know, it's early data, that sort of thing. But you said that yesterday, the testing that you did yesterday, you haven't been anywhere that had as many high performers as this bee yard.
Right, so Corey's bees tested about 50% scored high. 50% of the colony scored high.
What is a high score?
High score is 60% or above manipulation of those cells that were treated with the pheromones.
Okay.
Medium, we usually say, is about 40% to 59%. And he had 33% tested medium. So, I mean, overall, these bees are just scoring really high on UBeeO, which makes sense because we think that UBeeO is probably pretty strongly correlated with VSH.
Yeah.
But that's what we're here to determine, is how correlated those 2 traits are.
And she gave me that review yesterday, and I kept my composure, but I was overjoyed, to say the least, because I had
Well-
my suspicions about overlap too, just from some similarities with viral load reduction and things of that nature. But we need to see it, need to see the data. So I was first off honored and overjoyed that you would come out here and want to test my bees, and it's been really enjoyable, and the sushi was amazing last night too.
It was.
And then get her review on that. It's just so encouraging, because you know me, I've been obsessive over this for quite some time,
Yeah.
and I want to keep taking it to the next level and keep getting better. And I think that this tool is a game changer, and I think her work is going to change the face of the beekeeping industry and take us to the next level, to where we're not so dependent on miticides. Some areas I don't know that they'll be able to just completely abandon them, but even just reducing our reliance on that is so massive. I don't know how to articulate it really, because it's critical.
Right. Yeah, I think breeding has just been overlooked for a long time in honeybees. Most livestock cattle, I mean, that's a huge part of cattle breeding. Cattle rearing is breeding.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I think we just need to get away from the chemical dependence on miticides if we can.
We can have
You
our
got to
cake
use
and
them
eat it.
if you need them, fair.
Right.
But it's nice to be able to have some genetic stock that's resistant and maybe doesn't need them, that can be healthy all along.
And we talked about too how, some of them that test really high aren't as productive, but we know that we've seen it, super high productive, commercially viable bees that are very resistant, which makes me go nuts, but it's possible.
Right.
And so with this tool, it's going to be
Well,
maybe not even just possible, but the norm, I hope, after a while,
Well,
because
it becomes economically feasible
Absolutely,
to
yeah.
do the testing and do the work
I
to
think
do the
it's
breeding.
not only economically feasible, I think not doing this is economically infeasible for long-term pollinator. The whole food system is based on pollination, so it's far deeper than just the bottom line of beekeepers like you and I. It goes way deeper than that. So it's a game changer.
And it's like any other breeding effort. You can't ignore all the other important traits. This is one important
Exactly.
trait.
Yep.
But you got to have them, building up. You got to have them producing honey, and all those things are possible together. This is just one tool to help you find this trait.
And we'll find more, I'm sure.
Yes.
And know more, because we talked about varroa sensitive hygiene as a definition. The more we know, it starts to get cloudier, and which is awesome, because we know more and we advance in our knowledge through work like Kaira's done.
That's a key. We know that there is VSH, and we know that gives mite resistance, but there may be other things involved with it, and we don't know exactly what the cause is.
It's complex. It's not as just black and white or straightforward as originally thought, which of course it isn't.
Yeah.
Nothing's black and white.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing is. Exactly.
So Kaira, you've been field trialing this, and it is going to come to market.
Yeah, that's the plan. So I've been working on this for years now. It started out as a PhD project, and we realized kind of at the end of my PhD that we had something worth investigating. And so we've now started a company. We're working to bring it to the market hopefully by next spring or early next summer.
What's the company name?
The company is Optera.
Can you spell that?
Optera. It's from Hymenoptera,
Okay.
which is
I
the
like
scientific name of the social insects.
I'm on your wait list. You
Excellent.
probably didn't know that, but I'm on your wait list.
How do people get on that wait list?
On her website.
I would recommend they do, because it gives them an idea of what they need to produce. And so if you're really interested in this, preference on breeders and people that are going to use the data to further it. But how do you?
Yeah, so it's opterabees.com, and you can sign up. It's non-binding, but it just gives us an idea of who's interested, where you're located, and the people that sign up for a pre-order will actually get first dibs when we bring it out.
Do you have any idea of what the costing is going to look like?
We know that it should be under $20 a test. We're not exactly sure what the exact figure will be yet, but we're getting there. We're working on sourcing all the raw materials right now, so we should be there soon.
Okay, now a test is per colony.
A test is per colony.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
under $20 per colony.
Right.
And scale, of course, will change, costing quite a bit, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
So-
right now, we're getting our compounds made in the university. It's all for R&D. But we're just talking to the chemical companies. We're going to get it produced on a massive scale, and that'll bring the cost down significantly.
Awesome.
Exciting stuff.
My goal is to see if this works, and if it does, I want to bring a lot of success to you to drive the cost down, so I don't have to pay $20 a colony.
Fair.
And it is in a developmental stage, but I would say it's a useful tool.
Yeah.
Because you can already see correlation, like we were saying, between VSH. It's faster, it's more economical, and I think it's going to increase our understanding, especially comparing the two. So I would say it's absolutely, it works. But are we going to learn more through her research and whatnot? And oh yeah, definitely.
Well, and I hope that it, ultimately, I think it will be a money saver. I'm hoping that breeders can produce better queens that last longer. You don't have to buy as many queens each year. You don't have to buy new packages each year because your queens are surviving.
Yep.
Your bees are healthier. Your bees are more productive. And you're not having to treat as often. So.
And those queens will probably fetch a higher price if they've been selected for that too.
Well,
so it's mutually beneficial.
That's your
on both
angle, and
ends.
that's also my angle.
Yeah. Well, if you can't make money, it's just for funsies for a while. It's not sustainable. If you can make money at it and scale it, that's a game changer. You know?
Yeah. If you're trying to sell a differentiated product in queens,
Absolutely.
you can sell. Well, I've got purebred Caucasians, or
Right,
I've got
which is
purebred
cool. Yeah.
this or that.
Different.
But if you can show and prove that your bees are selected for mite resistance, which is the biggest problem in honeybees.
Absolutely, and has been since the late 80s. I mean, or
that is
even
the
earlier.
biggest problem. And if you can prove that, you're going to command a higher price.
Well, then
for
you
those
can have
queens.
UBeeO tested Caucasians. You can have UBeeO tested Carniol and GBO tested Italians. Most of these are Italian-ish. So, a lot of times the Italians have a bad reputation for being disease resistant. And yeah, a lot of them have zero disease resistance. But if you select for it using the proper tools or methods, I mean, like you heard it from Kaira here, that they're scoring exceptionally high. So I would suspect with a little selection pressure, you could easily have a high UBeO performing Caucasian or Carniolan or whatever you're into. People like different subspecies.
My perfect bee, I think, I really like Italian queens because they're bright yellow and they're big and they're easy to find. And I'm terrible at finding like Caucasian queens with those dark amber tiger stripes.
Especially
terrible
new
at finding those.
Yep.
So I want a big Italian bright yellow queen that has the tolerance or the resistance, and I'm imprecise in my words there. There's a very big difference in mite tolerance and mite resistance.
Yes.
Mite resistance is what we're looking for.
Yeah,
But I'd like those Italians that overwinter like a Caucasian or a Carniolan.
Well, see, I think that's another thing, is a lot of Italians have a reputation for eating themselves out of house and home. I think through a little natural selection, now maybe they don't winter quite as conservatively as some Carnies and Caucasians, but these are a more conservative Italian that has high expression of VSH and or UBeO. So yeah, and we're just getting started. I mean, that this is the last year for my day job here. I am just like a thoroughbred kicking in the gates, ready to go, because I am just stoked at what potential there is in working with you and different things, and just accelerating the breeding program, because I did this in my spare time. I don't have spare time. So yeah, it's exciting
And the time
stuff.
you would have otherwise been relaxing.
Yeah, I could have been watching Netflix,
My wife posted a meme on our Facebook page. 100 beekeepers were asked what they did in their spare time. 95 didn't understand the question, and the other 5 didn't know which day of the week it was.
Exactly. And if you ask my wife, she'll tell you that I hate relaxation. I'm trying to work on that. I'm trying to work on it a little bit. We'll see.
That's funny. I will say too, I think there's a lot of potential with other problems in the hive too, because what we've I've been developing this for years, but in the last couple of years I've actually started to get it out to beekeepers and breeders and have them send me data back, which is really nice. And we're starting to get evidence from different breeders that, the high-scoring UBeeO colonies also have lower chalk brood.
Yes.
They have lower nosema. They have lower other diseases. So, varroa is the biggest problem. That's the focus. But this isn't just about varroa. It's about healthy bees, bees that can detect unhealthy bees, get those out, and keep their colonies healthier overall.
Host resistance.
So
yes.
what percentage in other apiaries that you've tested this in test high?
Well, it depends if they've been selecting at all. Typically, if they haven't been selecting, we may see 3-4% test high. If they've been doing a little selection, maybe based on freeze-killed brood, we may see 10% high, but 50% is pretty unprecedented.
So does freeze-killed brood test for the same thing as unhealthy brood odor?
It doesn't test for the same thing. They're correlated. So we see if they...
dead brood and sick brood are two different things.
They're different things, yeah. So,
Okay.
you can imagine a dead brood is... The stimulus is increasing.
Yeah.
The stinkier, the longer the brood's been dead, the stinkier it gets. And that's actually, from a chemical standpoint, that's a different compound that the bees are responding to than this more subtle compound that's released when the bee's still alive but unhealthy. And so I think you definitely see some overlap in terms of the ability of those adults to detect a smell that's not wanted, but there's some specificity that's different between freeze-killed brood, pen-killed, UBeeO, and other methods for selection.
It makes sense to me. My wife will hand me a gallon of milk and say, "Does this smell funny?" And it's sort of like that.
So you're a high
if the milk is rotten, anybody's going to get rid of it. But if it's just starting to get a little sour,
Right.
you might think,
Depends on your sensitivity, right?
I don't know.
Just call it a probiotic. That's probably not scientifically.
All right, so the bees that score high are dumping the milk down the drain as soon as it starts smelling
High.
at any rate. Sour.
Would you say
That's right.
low threshold
Low
of detection,
Right.
basically? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the major benefit of that biologically is that they're getting that sick individual out of there before it's really able to spread the disease.
Yep.
Right? So
Proactive.
yeah, it's helping prevent the spread instead of coming in with a treatment in August, a mite treatment in August, which is knocking out mites when the viruses are already all over the place.
They're already walking dead.
Now, this is another key. This is a key point that I want to cover. So, the Harbo assay has to test in the presence of mites.
Yes.
You have to at least be doing IPM, where if a hive needs to be treated, it gets treated, but you have to have untreated hives to test with the Harbo assay.
Or at least a mite load. Like if you tested, or if you cleaned all your mites up, you can get a false positive.
Yeah.
Because it looks like your bees did that, but that was amateurized.
So if you're treating every July or August, you need to do your Harbo assays right before you do that
exactly,
treatment.
when your mite loads are at the highest, because it gives you a more definitive result. Because you're technically measuring the bee's ability to suppress mite reproduction. You're quantifying reproductives and non-reproductives and then scoring accordingly.
What's the earliest you can test for Harbo?
Well, that's the thing. We do ours in April, but I'd never treated the year before, so I would assume they're still there.
So he runs an untreated apiary. So
for research purposes, I do not promote people just taking their hands off the wheel and praying.
Yeah.
You might hit a pole. So,
but this is the key point that I'm trying to make. UBeeO is going to test even in a treated colony.
Yes.
Like you can clean them up in August and do your UBeeO test right after, because it is testing the bees. It is not testing for the presence of mites.
Right.
Yes.
We do recommend testing in spring to midsummer. So we tend to see that the hygiene level of colonies drops in the late summer and early fall. So I think that's probably biological, that they have other priorities that time of the year. They're trying to actually build up their population for wintering approach. It could be things like nectar flow. So we have still some experiments that we're running to see, what's the effect of nectar flow. We know sometimes that even use of a smoker can impact the ability of them to smell. And a research paper actually came out and said, use of a smoker can reduce their ability to smell for 20 minutes.
Makes sense.
That's no problem if
Yeah.
you're just going in your colony. But if you're running a test based on their ability to smell, you have to be careful.
So that's part of the 2-hour time frame
Yeah.
that you are running your test for.
Right. Yeah. So
Okay.
if we're running a 2-hour test and they're unable to smell for the first 20 minutes of that, that's a problem. So we're trying to still sort out some of those questions about environmental impacts, so that we can tell the beekeepers, this is the best way to use UBeeO. You want to use it this time of year. You want to avoid this type of smoke or fuel, and you want the nectar flow to be on, or it doesn't matter. We've tested to see if screen bottom boards have an impact. If there's greater flow in the colony airflow, that doesn't seem to have any impact. Colony size doesn't have an impact. But we're trying to answer some of those questions so we can guide users.
But similar to the Harbo, she's got to be in there at least 6 weeks because you want a representation of her offspring. So
Right.
if she hasn't been in there long enough, you're not going to get an accurate score.
Right.
Because
She
whoever
should
you
be laying
split-
for 6 weeks.
Right.
So
Yep.
yeah, at least 7 from an introduction. You want to have her. You want to have all of the bees that you're testing that could be, because they tend to perform hygiene at about 2 to 3 weeks post-emergence. So you want all your bees that are 2 to 3 weeks old to be hers.
Yes.
So on average, will you see lower mite loads in hives that test high on UBeeO?
Yes, significantly.
So can you use a primary and a secondary testing methodology? Primary being something like a mite wash or forcing a mite drop with OAV onto a screen bottom board to find your lower mite number hives, and then just spend the money to do the testing on those to select your breeders from.
Yeah, so when I select breeders, I would choose the best colonies for other reasons.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, choose your honey producers, choose the ones that have a big healthy population, and then test within that smaller group which ones are the most hygienic and breed from there.
Yes.
Mite washes are great. Looking at mites is always important, but you can have a super hygienic colony that raids a mite bomb,
Has a load.
that's collapsing,
Totally.
and they get full of mites on adults that
Yep.
are going to show up in your mite count.
Yep.
Well, once those mites move into the brood, if it's a hygienic colony, they're probably going to pull them out.
Mm-hmm.
But you're still going to see that higher mite load when they're on adults. So you got to be.
That
It's
is
an
why.
indication, but you got to be careful.
That's why I said on average.
On average,
Yes.
right.
Because I know mite bombs happen, and I know that if you're using that primary secondary testing methodology, you're going to kick some hygienic colonies out because of that reason, but I
Right.
don't think it would be the majority of them.
Right, but you could have, there are other mechanisms of varroa resistance, right? So
Yeah,
you could
swarming.
have a groomer colony
Mm-hmm.
it's not hygienic at all, but they're pulling them off adults, so you
Yep.
get a low mite wash.
You
Yeah.
could also have a swarmy colony that had a brood break,
Right.
and you could be selecting for colonies that swarm excessively.
Right, but on average, we've seen that correlation. So
Okay.
if you see a high UBeeO score, you'll typically see a low mite count.
So that could be a useful tool, but you've got to know what you're doing to use it.
Right, not black and white like we said
Exactly.
before.
Yeah. Yes.
Clauses with
Well,
everything.
I had one example too of a late season Harbo. We did, we pulled 100 and found 5 non-reproductive mites.
Yeah. They
So if
picked up
you,
a mite
that was
bomb somewhere.
100, so just, I mean, this isn't exact, but if you did 3 times that, which is a mite wash, 300 bees, that would have been a 15 wash. That's a cull. But if you did a Harbo, you would go, oh my gosh, she's 100% VSH expression, but
Right.
the load was high. That's why I say alcohol wash is good data, but it's not the primary selection criteria for mite resistance, in my opinion, based on, and it seems to match up with what Kaira said too.
But when you are looking at dozens or hundreds of hives,
It could reduce them,
on
but
average,
yes, it
I
should
think
be
you're,
lower.
I think you're
absolutely.
going to find
Agreed.
resistance in colonies that have lower mite loads.
Right, but like she
But
said
you
too,
have to know that's why you need to follow up to see, okay, well, this is a swarmy colony that has no resistance. They just had a low mite load.
Yep.
Or, there's something else going on. But I think it would be easier to find those that have resistance.
It would be a precursor, definitely. Yeah. But then you've got to weigh, too, how much labor did you put into identifying precursors, where if you just went in and UBeO'd everybody and bang, 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 you've got a definitive answer. So, economics, labor, all that comes into effect, and I think this is the most straightforward way, the way it looks to me, for cost, time savings, and to give you a solid result, whether you've treated or not, because like we said, the harbo can be skewed by oxalic, amitraz, whatever your flavor is. So that's why I'm pretty psyched about it. I mean, you've
changed your wording here since we were talking about this.
She asked me.
We were supposing and wondering if this was going to correlate or not, and your results yesterday have
definitely. And I mean, she asked me a loaded question yesterday about VSH, and I backpedaled. I said. My thoughts have changed. But that's learning. If you can't look at solid data and not change your thinking,
what did she ask you? You can't just leave that hanging.
What was the question exactly?
I asked you your prediction about the correlation between UBeeO and VSH. Is that what you're talking about?
No, there was a different one. Yes, I like that one too, but you were asking basically, was it strictly hygienic, or was there a quote-unquote brood effect too?
Right.
And at first, I used to say it's strictly hygienic, and no. Because the brood's giving cues too, so of course it's more complex than we originally thought.
Right.
And that my views on that have changed a lot because of her work and what she's found out too, and just, but I try to keep my mind open. I want to be data driven and see where it goes. I don't know.
That was the question. Yeah. Is VSH driven just by hygiene?
Right, exactly. That's what you asked me.
Hygienic response of the adults.
Right.
I don't know that I'm well educated enough to know the significance of this. I do know that if you don't know what you're selecting for, you're never going to get it. So is that the significance of it? Why does it matter if it's a hygienic function or if it's a brood odor function?
Just to understand it better, I think.
Yeah, so we know that from some previous studies I've done, we know that there are differences in the signaling ability of the brood, and there are differences in the detecting ability of those signals in the adults. Right?
Okay.
So, it'd be great if we could just say, okay, we only want to select for the brood that's really good at signaling, and then the adults don't even have to be sensitive. The brood that are, and that's how it works with Apis cerana, right? Apis cerana, which is resistant to varroa, the brood, when they are infested with varroa, they just die. They're super susceptible. Right.
Yeah.
The apoptosis.
Yeah.
So they're super susceptible to varroa on the individual brood level, and that gives them resistance at the colony level. There's a great paper that came out on that by Page. And so with this method, I mean, it's very difficult, it's very expensive to run the chemistry equipment that's needed to test for chemical signals. That's how all this started. But so what we're doing here, instead of testing for that signaling ability and susceptibility of the brood, is to test for the ability of the adults to smell. So that's the difference. And we're just going with the practical route, what's cheapest, what's easiest, what's fastest.
Right.
Well, that's interesting. So I guess the pinnacle of selection would be finding colonies that produce brood that make the smell excessively, and breeding for adult bees that pick up that. It's like a cell phone reception thing. If you've got one of the old bag phones with a 3-foot antenna and you're right next to a tower, then you've got a strong signal and you've got strong reception. It's kind of working like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you only need one. I think if you had brood that signaled if it was a little bit sick, that may not necessarily be good. Maybe in some cases it's important to have.
It might be too much.
Not a great immune system, but they got something, right? There's a possibility that if they're a little bit sick, they can overcome it. They can still be a functioning member of the colony. And so, I'd be careful not to select. I wouldn't want all my bees to have a little bit of virus to die immediately.
Yeah.
or to signal to trigger removal. But I think we can control from the ability of the adults to smell. We can control how good we want them to be at that. You know, if you start to see colonies that are removing everything that's healthy,
Not
you
good.
back up.
Yeah.
You know, you back
A little
up.
too
And
high.
that's the nice thing of having a scale of 0 to 100.
Exactly.
You know, if you
yeah.
start seeing all your 100%ers are overreacting, you can back off. We haven't seen that yet, but you can over select for a trait. But that's the nice thing of having this scale is we can kind of narrow in on what works.
So what would you consider a breeder? Would it be one that's 60% or above?
You got to ask the breeder that.
Well, I mean, it depends on your scenario. Like, I'm obsessive over it, so yeah, I'd want them to be as high as humanly possible because I sell virgins too, so they're going to outcross immediately.
Right.
Has she tested any of your AI breeders?
Yeah, I called one Jack the Ripper. That was like the first one or two that we opened up. She's like, oh my gosh. I'm like, what? Is that good?
What did that one test?
It was close to 100, maybe a 98 or so.
98%?
Yeah,
and they
I mean, it
removed
pretty
a lot
much
of...
destroyed those cells. Yeah.
So it was opening up the cells and pulling brood out within
Right.
2 hours.
Right. Oh,
But
yeah.
we may find breeders that don't have a high test because I have a lot of diversity in there, so I've got to sift through it too carefully without losing all my diversity, so it's a balancing act. But this is really revelatory. I can see what's up now, and if I have some breeders that score low, obviously I won't be grafting out of them, but I'll probably just keep them around, or maybe we'll go back and overlap if we don't have good Harbo data on it and show that so that we've got a good comparison between the two. So it's a learning curve, but overall, yeah, I'm very pleased. Like whenever she told me that, you know, overall this was the highest one apiary she'd selected out of. That's just, I was ecstatic
It's good to hear.
that.
You know,
Oh yeah, exactly.
It's good for me to hear that there's overlap and that this has got
Yeah.
legs.
Me
You know,
too.
it
I
could
got
be-
20
it could
of
really
queens
matter.
this year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
This is awesome.
yeah.
Could-
And I'm
this
sure I'll
could-
be sending more.
This could
Yeah, I
really
hope
be
Maybe some
significant.
breeders
There we
too. That
go.
would be awesome. Yeah.
That'd be great.
I'm holding you guys up, so let's go ahead and get to the field portion.
It's
of
been
it
a
all.
good conversation.
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, it has.
Productive.
We could talk all day. Like
I
Exactly.
know, but no work would get done, so
All right,
I'll let
let's
you
get
get
to it and show you how it works.
Sounds good. Who did we? Jeff probably knows. Who did we stop
129
with?
was the last
129. Okay.
Still I gotta design a stand for this thing.
does it need to stay upright like that?
Yeah, it helps. So we got
What's that?
the cap here, the bottom of it.
Yeah, I used to, but I got away from it in the
But
brood
the top
nest. It
part
was
is
too.
so-
I was getting too much wonky comb.
And so you don't want the.
So the hexane can
That
deteriorate.
means it's
the
probably
silicon seal?
screwed
Yeah,
up.
it will.
Let me see.
So we just keep it upright like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
it needs a queen. That one.
So we got.
Yeah,
I
we
think
can
we're
do
gonna have
that,
to
unless
stop at
it almost
20
looks like it's
for this
half-assed dead.
round. So basically we
Oh, you'll
test
see.
all the way up
That one
until
may
2
just be one
hours.
that needs a new
Then we
graft
got
in
to
it
stop
too.
applying.
And then
Start
it's time
checking.
to start checking them. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's see.
And right now we're working
Skip
with
this one.
vials that are 10 tests. So you want to get through multiples
No,
of
let's got a
10.
new queen in it.
And we'll also, I'm hoping to have some
520. No,
5
it's got a
test
virgin in it.
vials.
That one will work.
Because I want it to be, you know, I don't
Yep.
want anybody to feel like they have to leave some out that
I
they
think
wanted
that's
to
a
test
breeder
or
colony.
waste some that that didn't get used. But you can't, once you pierce it, you can't save it for the next day. You got to really use it that day.
Yeah. What are you looking for when you're placing that?
So I'm looking for an area that doesn't have, you know, a lot of uncapped cells. It doesn't have any that are capped but have been partially uncapped.
So
I typically
you're just looking for solid brood.
solid brood. I usually want to have at least one that's open, just to help me orient the pictures later
Okay.
on.
And does it matter brood age?
We go for purple eye or younger. They can be a little older than purple eye, but for some reason we don't know exactly why yet. When they're within a day or two of emergence, when we spray it on, it actually kind of triggers an early emergence. And that can just mess up your counts. So you don't want to think that they're hygienic, but really just all those bees emerged on their own.
Okay. So to test purple eye, you just uncap a few cells with a hive tool and
Yeah, you can check
And
if you
see
need
if that
to. I
frame
mean,
is-
there's nothing emerging around here. And I can see some younger brood around, so I
Yep.
know they're young enough. But if you're not sure, you can always just uncap a few and check.
Now this brood pattern, Corey, probably indicative of your nectar flow.
I would say so, yeah.
Your nectar flow has been wonderful this year, hasn't it?
Not exactly, no. About the time I'm like, yeah, it goes.
I'd say nectar flows have been.
Crashes and then it'll kick off again, and then it'll fall again. Now, yesterday I could smell they were drying something, so we've got some nectar coming in now, but it's been totally up and down. It varies from day to day.
The only place I've heard of good nectar flows this year are Pennsylvania.
Well,
North Carolina, we've had a great one in North Carolina. Yeah.
Ours in Middle Tennessee has not been good. Oklahoma's been terrible.
Yeah.
Louisiana, I know, has been terrible.
Kyle said northwest Missouri was bad. Southeast Missouri hasn't been good. No, I mean, it could be different. Jeff's up in Cape, you might ask him, but I don't think
So maybe
he's
it's
had a great
the
flow.
east and northeast.
Could be.
Have you got coastal effects where you're at? Or are you in the mountains?
I'm in the Piedmont, right in the middle,
Okay.
but I've heard it basically across the state. Folks have been saying that it's been a great year.
That's awesome. Isn't it crazy how area specific it is?
It really is.
Yeah.
Now,
We had an early spring too. It's been strange.
you gave 3 squirts there.
That's right.
And there's
And you can see it looks a little bit wet. That'll just evaporate off within about 20 seconds.
And
You'll
you were
see.
telling me earlier that you're doing those 3 squirts at an interval because there's hexane in the spray and it will melt the wax.
Yeah, it dissolves the wax. So if you put it on too quickly, you're going to start to see some of the cells uncapping as that wax just kind of
Yeah,
dissolves.
so you just
we
space
wait
it
5,
out.
10 seconds in between each spray, let it off gas a little bit, let it evaporate, and we actually use this PVC pipe to give it a little ring, because once it dries up, you won't be able to tell anything's happened there if you don't have the ring. So you got to be able to know where to come back and check 2 hours later.
Okay. And what number is this frame?
This is 100.
100. Let's follow this frame.
All right. Right this way.
We'll check in on this one at the 2-hour mark.
And the thing is too, is I like my bees swarmy. We talked about that already, to where a lot of people hate swarming, but to me that's when they're wanting to raise queens, and whenever they're swarmy.
Now let's clarify that. You don't raise swarmy bees,
Right.
but you let them get big and you don't give them extra
I didn't
space.
put supers on yet, that way it triggers them to swarm.
And you're using those
Those two are
stuffed colonies
Yep.
to make 2,000 queens.
good. Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're about it.
You got to be careful. You're selling queens now. You got to be careful about your wording.
Yeah, that is
and
correct.
explain that.
Because people make assumptions. Yeah, I wouldn't say they're not swarmy bees. I've seen really swarmy bees, but the thing is too, is like one breeding manual said the breeding bees that don't want to swarm is like breeding dogs that refuse to eat bacon.
Yeah.
It's a
Now-
natural reproduction, but some are swarmier than others.
I've had some people, somebody on BeeSource told me, made a comment that VSH bees are unworkably hostile.
No,
So you just went into a stuffed double deep with no
alarm,
smoke,
with alarm pheromone.
with alarm
on
pheromone from a sting on you,
them. Yeah.
pulled out a brood frame, broke honey loose. Look at the
Yeah,
broken
from the bird
honey on
comb.
that frame. That
Brushed them off.
and then shook them.
Yeah.
Did you get stung doing that?
No.
Not
I
on
had
this
one
hive.
from this last one down here, but no. A lot of it's how you move. You got to be fluid, and if you don't wash your suit or you have a lot of alarm pheromone on it, that could be a problem, you know. But most of it's how you handle it. You got to be a smooth operator.
A smooth operator.
Yes, sir. Jamie says I'm a smooth operator. 86.
All right, guys, we gotta get through 8 more.
Okay. This one's 86.
Time out.
Okay. Oh, we're about to hit the 2-hour mark.
We got, we got 40 minutes.
Okay.
Or so, 45, but. All right, what do we got here?
86.
86.
Too much talk, not enough work. I think that's what she's telling us, Nathan.
No, there's time for both.
It just for me to remember.
Okay, let's go with
So you're taking a picture.
Yeah, I take a picture of it before.
And then a picture after.
And then a picture after. And then I can just go back, line the two pictures up side by side, count the capped before and the capped after.
And the key to that is you're doing the counting in the air conditioning.
That's right. Yeah, without a veil over my eyes, right?
Yeah, because it's going to be 92 today.
It is, yes. We had a breeze yesterday. It seems like we got a little bit of one today, so. Yeah.
But it is nice to take it in, and you can do the counts real quick. Plug them in the Excel sheet, and it pops out. You have that formula in there. It just pops out the score. So
the key is you've got to keep the frames numbered. You've got to have. Is it better to have your hives numbered? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And Corey does. He's got all of his hives with tree tags on them.
Yeah, I like to put it on the bottom board because if you move boxes around or whatever, it gets screwy, but the bottom board just seems like a foundation, so to speak, and so I number those.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, and then I just mark the frame with the number, the colony number up top, so that we know which frame to pull back out 2 hours later. Just makes it easier to...
Corey and I were talking about the time of year to do this, that if you do it like July through August, maybe September, then you're not going to be rearing queens until the following spring, and you're probably going to have some supersedure or some death over winter.
Results could potentially be
so would early spring be the sensible time to invest and do this?
Early spring is, if you're a breeder, early spring's a good idea. Yeah. But I mean, it doesn't hurt, I think, to have some survivor data in your breeding stock too. So if you know they scored high on UBeeO one year, they survived the winter, you can breed from them the next year. That works too. Well,
that's another key, and I'm contrasting harboassay to this, but with harboassay, if you're treating your bees, then right before your fall treatment is the best time to do the harboassay because you'll have mite load.
Right.
And that means you're going to have supersedure and colony loss over winter, which will affect your data the following spring when you're breeding. With this, you can do the test in early spring and get good data.
Yeah, you don't need mites present to get the good data. That's true.
That's a good point.
What number did you?
188.
And there's the numbered frame. And we have had a few that were...
Where is it?
I don't know, this one may be a low score. But it's good to have both. Kara was kind of freaked out at first because there it is. So that one's a...
Oh, they have started.
See, they did some removal and they perforated, but this one is probably a, I would say, lower score, but she would be able to tell us a lot more. But yeah, see, they've completely removed that one. They didn't just uncap it; they're already taking it apart. But a lot of them, majority of it's taken out. So
now the time, I guess it's question per, but why just 2 hours?
I don't know. Like if you do much longer than that, I think you pick up low threshold stuff. Like they eventually figure it out. You want the ones that get in there and aggressively find it and get it on.
Okay.
That way it doesn't have time to spread. Interesting. You can see the indentation around it.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't see it on that side. But it's right there. Look, they're all over it. I don't see much activity on that one though. Just shake them. You can shake them hard with that thing.
No, they didn't
Not
really do much. That's on the edge there with it. Yeah.
As long as we don't do that on the initial testing. Let's see, where did she...
Where's the ring at?
That's a good question. I think it's right in here. Yeah, there it is.
I see it.
So
see
not
the
bad.
indentation. Oh, that's a good one.
We've seen
That
a
one's
lot
gonna
better.
score.
That one's okay. We've seen some, well, that first run and that one breeder that I've been really sending a lot of queens out of, she completely shredded it. But like Kara said, She's like, I'm glad you have some low ones or else you wouldn't need. I'm like, well, we're going to continue testing for sure, so, and then tie it with instrumental insemination, so we should be able to get our frequency even higher, even though it's quite high. But mediocre.
Probably a 30.
That's one. That was a swap queen with the Harbo breeding initiative that open mated here, so it was somebody else's queen mother that mated here.
Telling you, I'm wondering if this uncapping thing is different than sensitivity.
Yeah, thinking so. Well, that
Could
right
be.
there, because look at the other side of that thing.
Yeah.
So you guys think there might be a difference in uncap recap behavior and hygienic or sensitivity to unhealthy brood odor?
Yeah, it could be. So what if, what if just the inclination to uncap and recap is one behavior, but it has nothing to do with the actual stimulus coming from the cell? They just do it no matter what.
Because that frame has got a lot of uncap recap on it,
Definitely.
but they didn't score super high on the UBeeO
Yeah.
test.
Yeah, I mean, it's not low.
That's super interesting.
It's a middle score, but
If it scored nothing, that would blow my mind.
well, that's
but that
what I
was
told
still
you I
kind
saw
of
the other day. One that looked like that, and it scored.
Zilch.
Yeah, it looked like a 4% or something. I was like, what's going on?
Exactly.
So that's why I want to keep track.
Yes.
All right, he's bringing.
Where's it at? Right here.
Oh yeah. Ooh, damn, Corey.
That's really good. Let me get some footage of that.
Yeah.
That's gonna be, that may be 100% right
This might
there.
be 100% Corey. Check that out.
Yes. That's awesome. Here's a little yellow dot.
Yeah.
Let me see yours, Corey.
You can see, look at the bees working it here.
Yeah. That's
Not
cool.
bad.
Ladies. So I use a whiteboard just to help me keep track in my photo book of which colony matches which picture. Looks like a winner there.
And then just 195.
Yeah, you got 112 there,
Without
right,
counting, what would you estimate that at? 90+%?
100.
100?
I don't see anything really capped in there.
I'm going to follow up on her and make sure she's still in there. Yeah, she will be.
112.
Afraid that,
I could figure out where the circle was because there's like a bunch of bees that you could tell were at work. It's kind of neat to see. They did okay.
I believe should be like right there.
Yeah, just got to get it kind of exact on there. Sometimes it's hard to see.
Especially if those patterns are chewed up a bit.
Yeah. This one probably maybe 50-60%.
Yeah.
So you can see there's several in there that are still have.
So that's either
the
a
full
medium
cap.
or a high, you would think?
Yeah, somewhere around that cutoff between medium and high. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And that one, see, look at the uncappy on it too.
Yeah.
Same backside too.
So,
Yeah, I got it here.
Kaira, have you seen a correlation between score and survival in an untreated population?
Yeah, so I did. I published a little bit on that. We had a pretty small sample size because I can't always get beekeepers who want to just let a bunch of their colonies die untreated.
Yeah.
But yeah, we saw significantly higher survival in the high UBeeO than the low UBeeO.
So
We also-
60%? 60% and above?
Yeah, with a 60% or above. I'll say we also saw higher survival in the high freeze kill brood colonies compared to the low, but the difference wasn't as big. So we saw better survival in the high UBeeO than we saw in the high freeze kill brood.
That's awesome.
And we actually saw that reflected in mite loads too. So varroa numbers were also lower in the high freeze kill brood colonies, but they weren't as low as in the high UBeeO colonies. Yeah.
Very cool.
So it's like you do, and I think that's why you get differing results, differing reports from freeze kill brood, is because it was like right at that threshold. We had with the high freeze kill brood, we saw like in August about 3% infestation on adults, compared to 6 or 7% on the low freeze kill brood. But with UBeeO, it was like below 2% and above 7 was the difference. So it enables you to differentiate a little bit better.
Is that it on the other side? Right there?
Yeah, but you don't see the ring, but damn, everything's gone. I mean, they pulled it out and everything.
Shredded.
Let me see that. Wow.
That's pretty cool.
They let you know where the ring is even without seeing the ring.
Yeah.
There's a
Which one's
big
up
circle of empty cells. Are the cells themselves empty?
Yeah.
They've already
they
pulled the brood
Pull them
out.
and chuck it
They were
outside.
serious about this one.
They weren't playing games.
Wow.
That's a new, kind of fit in the back of my truck easy.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it's not in there already. Or I can't find that
I
hive.
don't know where this frame came from. Who's up next, you think, Kayla?
127.
127, and we got 2 minutes to pull
Okay,
that.
I'll go ahead and head that way.
So you're serious about the 2-hour time limit.
Oh yeah. You know,
How serious do you have to be about that? I mean, if you're off a few minutes either way, is that gonna change the results?
Yeah, I mean, every time you're a little bit off, you're losing some of your accuracy, just because you want to be able. If you did every colony at 2 hours 5 minutes, that's totally fine. But if you do some colonies at 1 hour 55 and some at 2:05, you're going to get less and less accurate comparisons between your colonies.
Okay.
And the reason we cut it off, Corey's got these superstar colonies that uncap and remove everything in a lot of cases, but most of the time what we see is they'll actually start recapping
Oh, really?
after 2 hours. So because the stimulus, is really on the surface. It's on that wax cap.
So they're
once they
getting
open
rid
it
of the
up-
smell. They open it up and they can investigate and say, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with this
Nothing
brood."
wrong, they recap it.
So you could get a false negative,
right.
basically.
Yeah, if you let it go too long, then you come back, everything's capped. You're like, oh well, they didn't do anything. Well, actually they did. See how you recapped it back. All right, 120.
That looks good.
Just
Not
a
too
little.
shabby.
Just a little
I
bit.
interrupted them. They were pulling them out.
They were hanging on trying to pull them out as he was brushing them off.
So we're gonna get it.
Pretty cool.
And then there's that 1 or 2 that they're actively pulling out of the cell.
Yeah, I
or
brushed
3 or
them.
4.
Yep, because you could see they were having a little
They were
pupa.
hanging, they were pulling, and you could see it coming out as
I took a little video of it. They were having a pupa pulling party.
These bees are serious
pulling
about
party.
it. Yeah, so that's another 100%er.
Beautiful.
Nothing capped in there.
Well, anybody would.
Yeah.
Let me get the lighting better on that. That looks like a young queen to me. I mean, that's
Just
a perfect brood pattern, but it's
Look at the UBeeO
maybe a
score.
1 or 2.
No,
No, there's nothing. That one's
Well,
already
they
open.
just started opening 2 or 3, but they're not.
extremely low.
Yeah, they haven't done
Any.
anything.
That's
And that's a kind of a tough looking brood pattern, but
exactly, but they shredded it.
maybe there's a reason it's tough looking.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So
Because
Like we
they're
were
starting to
saying
get some mite
earlier,
pressure, and they are.
Yeah.
there's no
removing all
black
that.
and white. There's check that out, baby.
Oh, it's almost 100%.
Am I going the wrong way, Jeff?
No.
Only 6 there that they haven't uncapped, and they chewed the top off of some of those.
Should be going the right way.
Look at them all huddled around here. Pretty good. I think that's the, there's a line.
That's the
indent.
indentation.
Yep.
Yeah, so they've started
Pretty
removing
good.
some of those, it looks like.
Yeah. I'm glad we're getting high scores here. It's just, I can't tell you.
Right there, maybe?
Yeah, that's it. I'm looking for the queen. I'm scared to death I'm going to kill one of these queens.
It'll be the one that scores 100%.
Yeah. Then you'll just think I stole it.
It's probably going to be a medium, maybe a high.
Yeah.
Let's see what Kaira says about it.
Not too bad.
Not too bad.
It's pretty interesting when she pulls it up on her iPad and shows them to you side by side.
It's fun to see them before and after.
So this Twin Viewer app lets you pull up your pictures, and you're writing down the date, the apiary location,
It's T2 for time 2.
time 2 hours, and then the colony number, and then you can see your picture of your whiteboard followed by the picture of the start and the picture of the finish, and then you can count that.
So we just count the capped initial and then the cap final. And this, comparing them just shows you, this one you don't count as uncapped because it was already
Yeah, it was already uncapped. That's interesting.
Not great.
Good.
Smash it.
We have all winners.
I know. I really think I'm just going to ignore.
So this is an open mated queen.
Yep. From one of my breeders. Open mated here. Beautiful.
I'd breed from that one.